Welcome to Community Crypto on CoinDesk TV. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and this week we are discussing the intersection of blockchain technology and the cannabis industry. I'm joined now by John Jennings, University of California Media and Cultural Studies professor and artist, and Lewis Hall, the founder of Burn1 Coin. Welcome to the show, guys.
How's it going, Isaiah?
Doing great. Glad to have you both on.
Great to be here.
Luke, absolutely. Glad to have you. And Lewis, I wanted to start off with you. Tell us a little bit more about your upcoming NFT project and how it will help with cannabis reform.
So Burn1 is a blockchain-based business, and our goal is to do good and do well. And there are so many different prohibitions inside of the cannabis industry that we thought, blockchain would be a great opportunity to fix some of those things, leverage greed, and bring everybody to the table. There is with the NFT project, NFTs are so hot right now, and so we started working with Weldon Angeles from Mission Green. He's one of the biggest reform activists out there on the scene right now. He was a upcoming hip hop producer back in the late 2000s. He worked with Tupac. He worked with Snoop Dogg, tons of others. Nice. And he was arrested for about $900 worth of cannabis and served 13 years. But he actually was his mandatory minimum was 55 years in prison, and he eventually was let out. Started Mission Green, let out. He was released from prison by Obama and pardoned by Trump. He started Mission Green and hasn't looked back since. He's just an absolute powerhouse. And so when we heard Weldon's story, we immediately said we want to work with him. And so we started talking about how we could use NFTs. He spoke about this treasure trove of unproduced music that he's had from when he was producing with these huge stars, and so as we said, let's do this. Let's put something together. Immediately, our one of our team members said that they had an incredible connection with Deirdre Holdman from Black Comics Collective and John Jennings, and so the whole process started probably about 4 or 5 months ago. So basically what it is, the title is Where There's Smoke, There's Fire. There are 4,200 NFTs that are they're generative art coupled with this Snoop Dogg track. And they're launching at 0.42 ETH. 65% of that is going directly to Mission Green. And it's an absolute incredible project, especially because we get to work with John.
Right.
John's work is just off the hook. So I've been doing a lot of the tech side and putting together the generative art for John's artwork, and it's really been an amazing experience.
Oh yeah. So John, you just got that shout out. Let us know a little bit about yourself and how you are using the Black Comic Collective in conjunction with Burn1.
Just a little bit about what I'm into. So my background's in art. I'm a graphic designer and artist, graphic novelist. And until fairly recently, when I started teaching here at the University of California, Riverside in media and cultural studies, the thing that attracted me to the project was, basically I hate bullies. I hate injustice. And when I look at what happened to Weldon, his story was extremely compelling. My friend Deirdre Holdman, who had started the Black Comics Collective, brought me on, and I just felt kind of a camaraderie with Burn1 and what they were trying to do. And also, too, when I was thinking about Weldon's story, he's just, the impetus for the project was that he's almost like this, what Lewis is saying, like this powerhouse, but he also is like this nucleus that all these things are kind of circling around, And so when I was thinking about the project, I was like, I wanted him to be like this kind of this central figure with all this chaos and beauty and trauma and wonderful experiences at the same time are kind of like just enveloping him, and that's kind of like the idea behind the image itself. Myself, I just feel like there's a lot of racialized class issues around how how the law has been arbitrated and created. And I think that this was a wonderful project to kind of unpack some of those things, and also to hopefully make something that was a compelling and powerful piece for Burn1 and for Mission Green.
Absolutely. So you just stated some of the racialized classism that goes into it and the inequality. Break down some of the inequalities that you see in the cannabis industry, specifically some of the prison times, some of the federal law changes that come about. What are some of the actual inequalities that people see in the cannabis industry?
So if we're thinking about just... Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go for it, John.
You're definitely... No, you go first. You go.
So some of the things that we see, in really specifically thinking about the industry is that people from the legacy market don't have the opportunity to enter into the more modern industry because for a lot of different reasons. If someone has any kind of conviction, they're not able to get into the legacy market. If you don't have the money to start up, you have to have the cash. You literally have to have cash because the prohibition goes right from the top to the bottom, and banking prohibition is a huge one. Being able to access loans, access seed funding is very, very difficult. And so what you see is a lot of white people who sort of swooped in, had cash, and are starting Apple Store dispensaries. And so what we're looking at is, how do we use blockchain to implement creative seed funding? How do we help to support people and use blockchain in order to offer points of purchase where many banks just don't accept credit cards that are, you're trying to use a dispensary. And so there are so many levels of prohibition that we think we've been working for almost the past year on figuring out different creative ways to make it so that the playing field is more level, and we've got a ton of cool ideas which we're working on and releasing. So NFTs is one of them, right? Where we can just literally use revenue from NFTs to inject directly into the people who are doing the work, and Weldon is doing the work.
Absolutely. Yes. And, one of the things I wanted to see as far as the intersection, like you said, of blockchain and cannabis, or cannabis and crypto, I should say, is that, in the cannabis world, it's still a Schedule I drug at the federal level, but you have states that make it legal, right? So it's a lot of confusion there. With crypto, you have not really a ban, but you have, sort of pushing away of Bitcoin and crypto. But at the state level in Miami or in Florida, in Texas, in other states, you see a high adoption rate. Do you think there is sort of an intersection there, John, as far as the rules for cannabis and for crypto?
I don't know exactly enough about the particular subject to speak. I would want to shift it over to Lewis.
Okay.
100%. 100%.
Okay.
We work in this. Burn1 is in this really insane Venn diagram. I happen to be I have a science background, and so I'm always thinking about diagrams. And Burn1 is like, we're in this eye of the storm. We've got crypto on one hand and cannabis on the other, and where adoption is happening on both sides, there are still so many difficulties, and people in both of those industries who see a ton of money to be made. And it's kind of a speed game, Whoever can get in fastest, create the technology, and implement it is going to make the most. And in order to do that, you need to have money.
Yes,
so once again, it cuts a lot of people out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And John, I wanted to ask you, as far as, like you said, you hate bullies. I do as well. Do you think that the NFT market can sort of level that playing field so that you can get the capital that Lewis is talking about without having to conform to whatever binary rules come about? Do you think that NFTs can sort of level that playing field?
I think there's potential. I think as an artist, one of the things, because there's also, as Lewis states, prohibitions in the art market as well. A lot of them are connected to, different levels of agency, different levels of access, in various types of art markets. So, what I like about what I'm hearing is that, the NFT space and also the blockchain technology gives us kind of a cultural hack into some of these spaces as well, as far as like giving artists of color and artists who don't have the type of capital, maybe potential access. So I'm interested in that as well. I mean, as someone who works primarily digitally, it's I don't know, it's kind of there's a sense of freedom in creating like this, and I really enjoyed the process of making the work too. And I think that, if you don't have like the access to say like the gallery system or the traditional museum system, for the reason, this could be an interesting alternative, I think. So I'm looking forward to seeing how things shake out. And it's what I love about it is like it really does intersect well organically with how I create work, and that's really pretty awesome for me.
Oh yeah, and that prohibition you spoke about, that's something I had to learn over the last year or two, learning about NFTs, meeting a lot of new artists. That prohibition at the higher levels and some of the exclusionary tactics used to put others up and others down, this sort of levels that out. So glad to hear that as well. And because we have this intersection of blockchain and cannabis, one of the things that came about is Snoop Dogg being a part of the NFT. How exciting is that, Louis, to have Snoop Dogg as a part of it, who has he's bought virtual land. We, of course, know his impact in the cannabis industry. How was that bringing Snoop Dogg into the fold?
So just to be clear, he is not involved.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So it's a piece. It's the music is owned by Weldon, and so Weldon has the rights, but Snoop Dogg is not on board. We wish he was, but he clearly, I mean, Snoop was probably like a month or two ago. He was talking about how he's a whale and he owns $17 million, dollars worth of NFTs. I mean, he's literally turning into the Elon Musk of NFTs. Very much like Gary V, right. Where he says one word and that's it. I mean, it's an absolutely incredible thing. That being said, working with these people who, Weldon's his treasure trove of work is impressive. And to listen to the experiences that he has with recording with all these giants in the industry is, my 16-year-old self never would have imagined me sitting here and having these conversations. We had an article that featured us in High Times too, which was pretty cool. Thinking about how just the level of exposure that we have had through that High Times article is really off the charts.
Oh yeah. Well, blockchain technology basically opens Pandora's box to a bunch of possibilities many of us didn't think we had. So I'm with you there. We said as a kid, you could never imagine it. Likewise, brother, at 16, I didn't know I would be here as well. So one thing I wanted to ask as well is, in Arizona, it recently came out. They have favorable cannabis laws, and they're also looking to accept Bitcoin for tax payments. Could you see a scenario where they let cannabis companies accept crypto or sell NFTs and then pay their taxes in that same crypto that they use? Could you see that scenario maybe, Louis?
Yeah, so we have a partnership with a business called Rethink Banking, and what that does for us is we're working with Rethink to create point of purchase systems that will be used in dispensaries. It's going to take a while before we can get to a point where crypto can directly be used. Right now, you can use blockchain, right, in order to carry out transactions, but allowing for the use of cryptocurrency right now gets into a lot of AML issues. For anti-money laundering, and they're just the government's regulations. It's just not there yet. I think probably within maybe 3 to 5 years, maybe less. I don't know. It would be incredible if the government kind of changed their tune. The reality is, you look at the government and the biggest corporations, politicians, Gwyneth Paltrow. Like everybody's hopping in on NFTs and cryptocurrency, and you look at all these celebrities, PFPs on Twitter and Instagram, and it's no longer their face. It is it's a cartoon character of an ape or a monkey or something along those lines. Everyone is buying into it, but the government isn't quite yet. So I think it's going to take a while before it is usable, directly usable in the industry.
Right. And I think, we'll see that in some time, but it just seems to me that intersection is natural. People already see it from a mile away. So it will be interesting to see how regulators think about it. And as an artist, John, how do you feel about, like you said, everybody's profile being an ape or a monkey or a duck at this point? Do you think people are actually appreciating the art, or is it more of just a social status thing, sort of like having a Rolex or whatever?
It's funny because it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I think that we are in the cult of personality constantly, right? Where, especially in this like hyper connected world that we live in, so people jump on trends. People pass around information differently. We do associate particular types of like use value with images. We always have, right? So yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I can't say which is which, but images always create status, right? And so if it's something that's hot or something that's trending and you are highly visible, then you're going to jump on it because it's the thing to do. But you also do have people who have a keen eye for art. You have people who have a particular type of aesthetic that that this type of work relates to. And the other thing I like about it is that it really does kind of like challenge the notion of value and also like cultural norms as far as like how art is produced and how it's curated. So yeah, it's always going to be like I think a mixture of the people, but if it's hot, people are going to want to do it. So that's I feel like human nature.
Absolutely. Yep. And art is very, very subjective. There are people who argue, hey, man, I don't care about PFPs, these monkey faces or whatever in art. But then you also, on one hand, have a banana taped to a wall sold for 6 figures. So
exactly.
It's very subjective.
How's it different from,
Yeah. How's that different?
Please.
Absolutely.
So the one thing that I always think about with, and particularly with John and with artists in the NFT world, is how important royalties are. And it's such a huge shift to give the artist the ability to sell an NFT and have that continual royalty. Whereas in the IRL, gallery world, an artist sells for one price. John sells a painting for, I don't know, $5,000 or something along those lines. And it gets really huge. And one day it sells for $1 million. And that's it. John's done. He doesn't gain any, he gains notoriety, but doesn't get any kickback, no royalties. And I think that, blockchain and NFTs is such a beautiful opportunity for artists to take advantage of that royalty structure. I'm really excited about artists being able to tap into that.
I agree with that.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Likewise.
I was going to state that. It reminds me of like the work for hire structure, for like doing graphic design work, where basically if you're hired by a corporate entity or whatever, you basically make this one image, they pay you for the rights to it, and that's it. And as far as like, royalties or any type of connection to it later, and of course the comic book industry traditionally has been, notorious for this. They just own everything outright, so I totally agree with that. And I'm very excited about it. The other thing was like, I want to mention is that this reminds me of, the pop art movement too, a little bit too, as far as like taking these wonderfully innocuous, everyday objects and turn them into like these wonderful art pieces. That's what I was going to say. But again, like I said, there's a delay, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, glad you were able to get that out. Yes, because you're absolutely right. And, one of the things that we discussed today is about, the art aspect, the NFT aspect, the cannabis aspect. But one thing I always like to ask, regulations. I know people, like to try and ignore it, but do you see any sort of regulations, Louis, that could hold back raising money through NFTs or collecting them and reselling them later? Are there any regulatory things in the way?
I think that the main thing is As far as regulations, I think that we just probably need to assume that everything is going to be, taxed about 30%, and just assume that if you make profit, you're going to get taxed. I don't see that probably changing anytime soon, unfortunately. I would like it if crypto was treated slightly more like the way that stocks are. And you can have full wash sales and just the same privileges that the stock market has. Why there's a lag is that the really wealthy people haven't gotten on board or deep enough yet, is my feeling. Once they're embedded deep enough, then they'll change the laws so that it works better for them. But I think that probably right now they're just accumulating, buying and buying and buying, and then they'll change the laws and make it so that they can sell. It is important to remember that there is a reduction in the percentage of tax that you are taxed after a year. So if you buy and hold on for a year and then you sell, it goes from like 30% down to somewhere around like 15 or 20, maybe. I don't know. None of it's really fantastic, assuming that you get some profit.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and what you're referring to, long-term capital gains versus short-term. And then also too, it incentivizes you to actually hold it because your tax liability can actually be lower. And again, like you said, with regulations, it's sort of a gray area, so it's hard to determine it. But you're right. If you just think ahead and say, hey, 30% is going to be taken in some form, let me save it, that could bode well. So before we wrap up here, I want to ask, where can this NFT be purchased and what date is the release?
So the public release is February 5th. It is at 4:20 p.m., which is fitting. You can get all kinds of information from our website, burn1.today. We have a Discord group, which is pretty active. It has all of the information. That really is the first place that we release a lot of alpha. That's where if you wanted to get onto our green list, it really is a white list. We're trying to change the language. If you want to get on the green list, it is done through Discord. The green list gives green listers the ability to buy at 20% less than the opening value or the public value, and so that is 24 hours prior to the public sale. And all of this, like we focus a lot on Twitter. The Twitter handle's at burn1coin.com. I'm sorry, at Burn1 Coin.
Absolutely. And John, please give your Twitter handle as well so that people can view this NFT project as well as other art that you have.
I'm at J.I. Jennings on Twitter and John Jennings Art on Instagram.
Absolutely. And I thank you both for coming today. This is an absolutely great project. I can't wait to jump into the Discord and check it out, the green list. Thank you both for coming on today. I appreciate you.
Oh,
thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. And that's it for this episode of Community Crypto. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and every week we are building a global community with local crypto groups. So be sure to tune in every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern on CoinDesk TV.